Well, welcome to ZooBox, everybody. This is Shaun, and today we got a very special video. We're going to be looking at a children's book. We're going to be looking at Johnny the Walrus by Matt Walsh, illustrations by Kay Reese. If you don't know who Matt Walsh is, he's a conservative commentator. He works over at the Daily Wire these days, and he just recently released a documentary called What is a Woman, which you can watch on our Odyssey channel. Because they don't even want your apology, because your apology won't be good enough, and then you'll just get dragged further down and further down. We see it all the time.
Jar Jar Binks,
your life.
Pansexual? Do you think? Transgender?
Why would I even care?
If it's his truth.
Well, it ain't true.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major, or are you?
No.
Okay. How do you know that you're a man?
How do I know that I'm? I guess because I got a dick.
Our what do you call it? Our fair use viewing of What is a Woman. You can watch it on our Odyssey channel. I'll leave a link in the description for it. But he wrote a children's book. Then he wrote it kind of a while ago. I think it was like maybe 6 months ago or so. And it finally came out. It comes in and out of stock. It's like one of the highest selling children's books, I think, in Amazon history, because he's got a very dedicated base. The people that like Matt Walsh really like Matt Walsh. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be reading through the book. We'll do a reading of the book, and then we'll review the book afterwards. Okay? So without further ado, let's get started with Johnny the Walrus. Johnny the Walrus by Matt Walsh. Illustrations by Kay Reese. Johnny's a boy with a big imagination. One day he's a dog, the next day a crustacean. One morning he came downstairs barking and clapping. Wood spoons for tusks and socks fins a-flapping. I'm Johnny the Walrus, he said with a roar. The wood floor's my ocean, the carpet's my shore. Johnny's mom loves her son's make-believe time. You're Johnny the Walrus till you change your mind. But Johnny's mom's phone said it's not just pretend. Only a bigot would say that. How dare you offend? Mommy was told to take John for a checkup. You'll need to eat worms and put on gray makeup. The worms give you whiskers, the gray blends you in. And a simple procedure cuts feet into fins. It's gross eating worms, Mom. They're all so dang twitchy. Wood spoons kinda hurt, and the makeup is itchy. Deep down, Johnny's mom knew that something was wrong. But she felt so much pressure, she just went along. The internet people knew just what to do, and Mommy was told to take John to the zoo. When Johnny arrived, the walruses grunted. My boy's a real walrus. His growth was just stunted. The zookeeper thought, what's she talking about? Ma'am, that's just a boy with wood spoons in his mouth. But if I believe that, they'll say that I'm phobic. Protecting your son, ma'am, is what's most heroic. At last, Johnny's mom was able to see that Johnny's not what he's pretending to be. Now, Mommy ignores the mean things on her phone, while Johnny pretends he's a bird flying home. The end. Well, there you have it, Johnny the Walrus. So what did I think of Johnny the Walrus? Well, I'll preface it with this. So I have an almost 5-year-old, so I've read tons and tons and tons and tons of children's books over the past 5 years. I mean, just an infinite amount. They never end. There's so many of them. Have you ever been to a library? Yeah, we're a big reading family, so I've experienced a lot of this stuff, and more often than not, the only ones that I would ever have a problem with are the more modern ones, because they seem to be more overtly like political or ideologically bent. It goes beyond kind of just the simple basic lessons that you would want a child to kind of entertain, to experience in this kind of format. Things about like loyalty and friendship and doing the right thing, sticking up for yourself, sticking up for your friends, confidence, heroism. Those kind of just those basic conceits that it's good to have a child interact with through like media, through fiction. It gives them, it allows them to be able to kind of couch these things in something tangible, something that they can understand. It gives them gives them a broader perspective on those things. Because until it's like kind of put into something that's more experiential, it's a little bit abstract, and that can be a weird thing for a kid who has very little life experience. But there's also a flip side to that reality, whereas like you can just kind of give a kid an opinion about something that they can't possibly understand. You know, one of the things that comes to mind, the one that kind of made a splash in terms of we're talking about kind of ideologically driven children's books, would be Ibram X. Kendi's Anti-Racist Baby. It's one of these kind of children's books that's really not written for kids. It's written for parents to feel good about themselves for having read it to their children, because it's just not. It's still abstract concepts. It's things that they can't really understand, and that's, you know, in the prose of the book. You know, while it's kind of dumbed down and it's sing-songy and it's kind of lyrical and it rhymes a little bit, just like most children's books do. It has an agenda that seems kind of beyond the idea of actually being able to interact and understand these things on any real level. Like a child's brain, because of their development at that period and their life experience, really can't account for anything that's being said in something like that. So when I came to this book, I kind of expected something a little bit more in line with Anti-Racist Baby, and I would say that I think it kind of splits the difference. And most of the stuff that I have issues with, the things that kind of make it for parents more than it makes it for kids, is stuff in the background. You know, there's a few pages here and there. Like there's one about, you know, the internet stuff, like the kind of signs people are holding when the mother's imagining the mob. Also, when they go to the doctors, there's kind of like a doctor, his certificate, his degrees on the wall. It's like from Woke Doctor University. Things like that, which, you know, they're little nitpicks, whatever, I understand, but they're completely unnecessary. You know, it's a children's book, and I kind of believe that children's stuff should be explicitly for children. It doesn't need to both entertain me as an adult and my child. Like, I can suck it up for, you know, the time it takes to read the book, or I could suck it up for the time that it takes to watch a movie. I don't need something that's like, you know, subversive in any real way. What else? Oh, also the one thing that I actually, and I think it's a little bit of an example of what I was talking about, is that the book is more about the mother and the mother's experience and the pressures of social media than it is about Johnny the Walrus. I mean, while I totally agree with the thesis of the book that children have wild imaginations, you can entertain them for fun, you can encourage them to indulge in that stuff, but that doesn't mean it's like a declaration about their identity. And so I totally agree with that, the conceit of it. But it was kind of a little strange going through the book, and now I've gone through it several times, you know, through the process of making this video, is that it's really more about the mother than it is about Johnny. And which kind of takes it to that space. It takes it to a space where it's no longer really for kids, because I think you could have done this story. You could have done this story more from Johnny's POV. And I think even you can even bring in the stuff with the mother, but have it be from more explicitly from Johnny's POV. I think it's a little imbalanced. It's a little imbalanced in that way. But, you know, being kind of a little bit biased and agreeing kind of with the sentiment of the book, I didn't find it that overtly egregious. I think it's generally okay. But I do question whether or not it's really, like, sincerely or seriously meant for kids. It kind of feels a little bit like it's more or less meant for the adults that buy it. It's more for the parents. It's more for the parents than it is for the kids. I think, you know, if you're a kid, you're going to be able to read this to your kids and they're going to be fine. But the concepts itself, like what it's actually talking about, I don't think it does a very good job of making that accessible to a kid. Honestly, I really don't. I don't. It just didn't come off that way. It's not something that like I would be like reading my kid all the time. In fact, I think my kid might be more or less just kind of bored with it. Just because it is mostly about the mother. It's about social media and the pressures of social media on parents to kind of capitulate to not just the mob out there, but affirm like whatever your kid says at any given time. You know? So there's that. But I don't find it like insanely egregious because it's not like a negative message and it doesn't paint a negative picture of like, you know, society at large. It's not doing the same thing that Ibram X. Kendi's doing with Anti-Racist Baby, where it's more ideologically driven, and it's more about like kind of in a weird way just pitting people against each other, and then trying to tell children how they should assign like their own personal value to themselves based on their skin color, which I find really gross. I find really egregious. Johnny the Walrus never really gets into that. It's not that specific about things. So if I were to say which one is like less problematic, dare I use the word problematic, I would say it's Johnny the Walrus. But yeah, it's a nice book. It's got great illustrations. I really actually enjoy the illustrations. I think they look pretty good. I just wish it was a little bit more thoughtful. I think this is a little lazy. It's a little lazy in the way that it presents its ideas, because it does not, like I said, writing a children's book that is really meant for adults to kind of feel good and chuckle to themselves isn't a children's book. This is a meme. It's just a piece of ephemera. It's Matt Walsh doing what Matt Walsh does, which is kind of hitting them back in the same kind of using the same platforms in the same realm that the people that he's opposed to use it, which I understand. I have always had kind of mixed feelings about Matt Walsh. I have, like, when it comes to this kind of stuff, these topics specifically, I've liked him because he's like a hammer. In the same way that you have all these like obnoxious activist groups just out there just hammering people with these ideas, trying to normalize kind of fringe notions. I think you kind of need somebody like Matt Walsh for better or worse. And, I've enjoyed his stuff over the past year, I'd say. I've come around to him more than I have at any other period of time. I remember reading his blogs like years and years and years ago and not really liking them. They're a little too authoritarian for my taste in terms of the way he feels the methods he would use to solve the problems society's ills. I generally don't necessarily love, but we're also at a time period where that is kind of what's going on. That's the game. That's the game that's being played. That's the culture war being fought. So I have to at least I've come to at least appreciate his perspective more than I had before. So with that, I'll bid you adieu. But yeah, I can't really recommend it as an outright children's book. It's funny. It's a funny meme to have. But as in terms of it being a children's book, like if I were to give it out of 10, I'd give it like maybe a 5.5, maybe a 6 if I was feeling super generous. And I know this sounds like really negative on the book, but it is the reality of it. Like I'm a parent. I read books to my kid, and I have a kid on the way. Couple weeks from now, I read them children's books, and I like them being more specifically for children, teaching them lessons that pertain to their lives rather than something that are more adult considerations. Not to say that you can't have serious books, not that you can't have characters that go through harrowing ordeals, etc. I would check out Mouse Guard. My son's actually at the age now where Mouse Guard is like a really cool thing to him. That's it's like a fantasy book. Kind of reminds me of Redwall. It's like mice cast in the roles that normally would be in like medieval stories and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. But there's a lot of good lessons, a lot of solid stuff in there. And this is just it's made for a parent to just, I keep going back to this, but it's made for a parent to nod their head and be like, oh yeah. What, a mother having to learn this kind of simple reality. And it's not like this book is going to get in the hands of people that don't already agree with it. Like if you don't already agree with Johnny the Walrus, you're not going to buy it. It's probably not going to end up on many bookshelves in many libraries, which is bullshit. If you're going to have Anti-Racist Baby at the library, I live in like a little podunk southern town. Anti-Racist Baby is at my fucking library. I've actually borrowed it one time because I wanted to read it for myself. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. In the pantheon of modern children's books, it is right where you would think it'd be if you're thinking of somebody having a more conservative ideological bent. And you're going to have to weigh that yourself. You saw the book. We read the book. You can judge this for yourself to to kind of make a judgment. So I hope that parents have found this insightful to one degree or another. And like I said, I don't disagree with the book. I disagree with making children's books that are for adults. That's what I disagree with. But anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Adios.